Listen up, hashtag no more lies. Black women, hear me when I say, if you ever wear weave and or color your hair, it means that you hate yourself, okay? It also means that you are not natural, or at least not a real natural. Oh, and while we're on the subject, if you also ever happen to wear makeup, you are deceptive, a liar, and a catfish. These are the facts. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Those are opinions, which often get confused with facts on the internet. My bad. We can't ignore the fact that internalized racism has created some deeply rooted self-hatred within the Black community. And this self-loathing can manifest in obvious and not so obvious ways. Furthermore, and let's just keep it all the way real, let's keep it a buck, there's no denying the fact that there is a very high incidence of Black women who choose to wear weaves and wigs, not just on YouTube and in social media, but in everyday, regular life as well. By the way, I use weave as a catch-all term for any fake hair, wigs, sew-ins, box braids, crochet styles. You get my point. Indeed, there are many YouTubers who have more or less built their entire channels around weave content. And this isn't to say that only Black people wear wigs, because that's obviously not the case. Historically, I think it's fairly obvious that the prevalence and use of wigs amongst Black women in particular has everything to do with having to conform to beauty standards that were imposed upon us. Afro-textured hair and styles like cornrows or even locks are to this day not accepted in many workplace environments. So wigs, weaves, relaxers all became a means to an end, and that end was being employable. Bringing things up to the present, I do feel that there has been a scaling up in the popularity of wigs through social media and, somewhat ironically, through the natural hair movement. I dare say the idea of wearing a wig became more mainstream, for lack of a better word, once white and other non-Black celebrities started doing so openly. Lady Gaga comes to mind. Crispy recently put up a video called something like "Wig Expert Spills the Tea." The perception of wigs evolved somewhat. No longer were they just for grandmas and aunties. Though there are some wigs that should be. Still salty at y'all for roasting me for this auntie wig last time I wore it in a video. For us millennials at least, wigs became cleaved to the notion of protective styling. For those who couldn't or simply don't want to wear the styles that, in my opinion, most exemplify protective styling, buns, updos, weave became an alternative option for protective styling. As someone who's never had a perm, I've basically worn protective styles to some extent my entire life. It's just that when my mom was braiding my hair up as a kid, we didn't have the language protective styling. We didn't know these terms. I'd never heard of protective styling until I discovered natural hair videos on YouTube some 9 or 10 years ago, which is also how I discovered wigs as a possible protective styling option. A lot of you guys know your girl is styling challenged, but I also do love to switch up my look a lot and drastically. It sounds dumb, and it probably is, but it had never really occurred to me before that wigs were available to and appropriate for me. They always seemed like something, like I said, that grandmas wore, because in fact, the only person I knew who wore wigs was my grandma. YouTube opened my eyes to the wide world of weave, and being able to completely change my entire vibe in a matter of seconds, it never really gets old. It's the same reason I enjoy playing around with makeup and fashion, experimenting with different color combinations and textures and shapes, just creating looks, y'all. It's all just really fun for me and inspires me creatively. Weave legit for me is no different from switching out my jewelry or shoes for a particular look. It all just comes down to the vision. But according to a lot of people, that's not the case. Anyone who wears weave or makeup does so because of self-hate, and then the people who don't engage in these types of enhancements are of course just fundamentally better human beings, obviously. Sarcasm. There is no inherent value that can be placed on a person for how he or she chooses to wear her hair, or her face for that matter. I got a comment asking me, where does the pride come in at if I'm always wearing wigs instead of my real hair. I explained to this individual where the pride came in at and pointed out that I probably wear wigs less than 10% of the time in my real life. Sure, I do wear them on camera a lot because I like to stay serving looks. It's just fun for me, but realistically in my everyday life, I probably am just wearing my regular hair as it is, my regular hair in a bun, perhaps with a phony puff on top of it, or a head wrap, simply because these options are easy and comfortable. I'm pretty low maintenance when it comes to my hair. That means lazy. Rather than deal with the complications of wearing my hair out when I just want the look of wearing my hair out, it's really nice to be able to wear a hat or a phony puff that resembles my real hair without having to deal with the aftermath, the detangling every night, the braiding and twisting my hair up every night just so I can go to bed type of drama. It's a lot of manipulation, and not to mention my fro is basically a weather system. If it's humid out, I don't want to have to worry about my real hair turning into a whole ass mop within a couple hours of leaving my house. Frankly, wearing a phony ponytail, a hair hat, a head wrap, it's all the same to me. These are just options to leave my hair the hell alone. I do gravitate toward kinky and curly textures because that's what I actually grow out of my scalp, so it's my comfort zone. To tell the truth, I've had a hard press maybe 10 times or less in my entire life, so I always just feel a bit weird seeing myself with straight hair. But as the years have gone by, I have gained more confidence and I have enjoyed experimenting with trying out different textures in various pieces and wigs. Because why go through all these stress and hassle of straightening my real hair when I can get the same exact look, if not better, by just popping on a straight wig or ponytail in seconds. Whether it's a wig or a piece that looks a whole lot like my real hair or one that looks nothing like my real hair, they're just options for me to avoid messing with my real hair too much while still keeping it cute. As YouTubers love to say, it's not that deep. But head wraps never get these same accusations of being an outgrowth of self-hate in the same way that wearing a wig, or for that matter, makeup does. I've been called a fraud simply for wearing phony ponytails and wigs in my videos, even though you guys see my real hair kind of frequently because I do a lot of hair content. And not to mention, if I am wearing a piece, it's usually pretty obvious. So if I don't mention it within the content of the video itself for one reason or another, I always disclose it and list the specific one in the description box in case you want to pick it up too, girl. Similarly, some people love to leave sneak diss comments like, "You look completely different without makeup," or "You don't need to wear all of that makeup." What's rich is that these people think that they are somehow complimenting you when they say things like this, when what they should have said was nothing. The subtext of all of these comments about makeup and weave is an accusation of self-loathing with a side of dishonesty. If you cover up your real hair, it's because you hate it and also you're a liar. If you wear makeup, you're not only failing to embrace your bare face, you're also engaging in deception. I have always known that these comments come from people who have problems that are far larger than me and have nothing to do with me and whether or not I happen to be wearing fake hair that day. So whether I do or do not wear weave or makeup is not gonna fix these folks. Most importantly, if I were actually coping with self-loathing through weaves and makeup, snide comments from assholes on YouTube are not going to be the thing that fixes it. But for the longest time, I still felt the need to explain myself, to somehow qualify the frequency and reasoning of when and why I wear wigs and makeup. I don't look like this unless I'm filming. I don't wear makeup most days, and so on. Here's the problem with that. None of these explanations are owed. If I do look like this every day, full beat, with some long ass hair and a color that definitely is not my natural hair color and a texture that is definitely not my natural hair texture, that is my prerogative. And whether it means I hate myself or not, by the way, it doesn't, that really isn't anyone else's concern. I think I felt the need to assert my self-validation to these fucking strangers, even though I really don't need to do that. As if somehow the fact that I don't wear my on-camera drag and wigs day to day somehow proved these people wrong. There's no need to prove these people wrong because these accusations don't deserve to be dignified. Women and men who do choose to wear a full beat on a daily basis and inches down to their ankles are no better and no worse than people who choose to never wear such enhancements. Personally, I'm somewhere in between, and it all just comes down to how each of us as individuals like to present ourselves to the world. Now, if that beat does involve skin bleaching and wearing foundation that's like 8 shades too light and colored contacts so that you can have pretty eyes, that's another conversation. As is the obvious overrepresentation of silky, straight wigs and weaves when you compare it to the representation of kinky, curly, afro-textured wigs and weaves. It's just the same old European beauty standards that have been getting imposed on people of color since forever. Same shit, different century. Because let's face it, afro-textured, kinky, curly wigs and weaves are not usually what we're seeing, and until relatively recently, all that was available was Halloween afro wigs and not much else. So yes, of course there are incidences of people feeling pressured to adhere to beauty standards that come from an external source. Beauty standards that we didn't create for ourselves, whether it is in a school, public, or private, corporate environments, and of course the military in particular is off the chain. But I no longer think that we need to entertain or dignify these notions that wearing weave or wearing makeup is inherently indicative of some sort of self-loathing. At least it isn't for all of us. It is not deception. It is not self-hate. It is self-expression. And to all the men who like to insert themselves into this conversation over how women ought to or ought not to wear our hair and makeup, a brief aside. A of all, for all these men who claim that they only like women who don't wear any makeup, this is almost never true. They just think it is. More often than not, what these guys actually like is natural makeup. Half of y'all are playing yourselves anyway, talking about take her swimming on the first date. Meanwhile, you're sweating the same women you're trying to humiliate, sliding into them DMs and having a one-way conversation with your damn self. Get the fuck out of here. Two of all, while I can't speak for all women, I think I can speak for a lot of us when I say, we aren't wearing makeup for men. We're wearing makeup because we like it and we like how it makes us feel. Putting on a red lip or an ombre fuchsia wig can completely change my entire mood. In conclusion of all, nobody asked you, Frank. If you're not attracted to a woman rocking a spotlight cut crease and 30-inch bundles, then keep it to yourself and leave her the fuck alone. Go holler at, I don't know, Alicia Keys or some shit. Who, by the way, is also wearing makeup. Rant over. Those are my thoughts on these weird accusations that Black women often get when we choose to wear hair hats and makeup and so forth. But feel free to chime in with your thoughts as well in the comments. Thank you so much for hanging out and sticking with me to the end. I will see you guys in the next video. And always remember, never trust anyone with a Morphe code. Bye-bye.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm gonna tell you that now.